So hi everybody, I'm Mick, and welcome to my friend Joe's shop.
Hey everybody.
So I thought you all might like to take a look at get a shop tour of my buddy Joe's facility. Actually two shops, right?
Yeah.
So a workshop and a personal shop.
Right.
Okay. And some of the fascinating tools he has and some of the things he does. But first I'd like to tell you the story about how I met Joe. So I'm sure you've all seen at least the videos that I have out there on my lathe, the Clausine Model 100, and I bought that lathe from Joe, and Joe was nice enough to tell me the things I should be looking for, because when I bought it I knew nothing. It was the first machining tool I bought. And I could have gotten scammed, I could have ended up with a piece of junk, but Joe was a great guy, walked me through the things I should be looking for in the lathe, flatness and all those sorts of things, showed me how the lathe met those criteria and where it didn't,
Yeah.
and all the improvements that he had made to it. And on top of that, gave me a great price with tons of extra tooling and everything. So if it wasn't for Joe, I probably would have given up on this hobby right after I got a piece of junk lathe. Things like the DRO and the variable speed motor and the quick change tool post and all those things. If I didn't have those, I probably would have given up. But I didn't, and I've since spent tons of money on other tooling, and so I'm deeply embedded in this hobby now. But anyway.
Well, the lathe you bought was actually my first metal lathe also.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, so I kind of, when you purchased it from me, I felt your needs and your story, so I tried to help you out along those lines to encourage you to get more into metalworking.
Yeah.
And that's the lathe that got me into metalworking.
Yeah. Well, I know we've talked since then, and you've expressed a couple times that you kind of miss it, and
I do miss it. It was a real classic lathe that had an antique value, and I love antiques.
Yeah.
I particularly love scientific instruments, antiques, and this lathe had that same kind of appeal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really well made.
Absolutely.
Old. It used to have the old belt drive, and I replaced it with a DC motor from a treadmill. Mm-hmm. And then I found a set of DROs that were not intended for a lathe. They came off an old scientific instrument, and I took them off and put them on the lathe and got them all to work. So I was really happy to see it go to somebody who appreciated it also.
Yeah, well.
It's like a little baby that I had for so long that I learned metalworking on. And when somebody like you purchased it, it was like, it was nice to see it pass along and somebody who cared for it.
Well, and it's
added to it as much as you did.
Well, and that's the thing is it's in such good shape that you just want to take care of it, and you want to see it last forever.
Yeah. And it actually is a very nice size, niche-wise.
Yes.
You can do woodworking on it, and it's stable enough and strong enough to do metalworking on it, and light enough not to weigh a ton if you want to move it around.
Yeah, exactly.
So it has a lot of pluses.
Yeah, I'm extremely happy with it.
Yep. I had to replace it with two lathes.
So yeah, well, we'll take a look at those lathes here in a little bit. So so if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about your background and what you do. And
okay. Background-wise, most of my career and my education, I'm a scientist, a PhD in chemistry. But I've always liked making things, and even when I got my degree in chemistry, I specialized in making instruments for chemistry, analytical type instruments, learning about sensors, and along with the chemistry that was needed to apply that. And then once I got a job with Knowles Atomic Power Lab, where I was a radiochemist for many years, but also working in automation and introducing robotics to various areas of the chemistry lab and later on to the other aspects of the lab. But that interest in automation and tools is highly driven by my own personal interest in tools and making things. Mm-hmm. And so I started making a workshop right away. And this workshop that you'll see today is kind of a culmination of, I'd say, 30 years of living in this house.
Okay.
And making the workshop better and better.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of funny, when we were looking at houses, my wife and I, she would look upstairs and I'd of course go in the garage and the basement right away to check out those spaces to make
Yep.
sure it was good.
Yep, I know the, yep,
Yeah,
I do the
so-
same thing.
Yep, so when we found the place, I liked the basement, she liked the kitchen and the rest of the house, so, and right away I started making the basement mine.
Okay. So did the other shop exist when you bought the house?
No, the other shop did not exist.
Ah, okay.
And what happened there is, as I got towards the end of my career at Knowles Atomic Power Lab, I kind of wanted a bigger shop than I had in the basement. And I was thinking also, maybe I could start that second business that I've always dreamed of, and have a business where I could make instruments, analytical instruments for various industries.
Okay.
And so when I made the workshop, I made it bigger than I thought I would ever need. It was a 30 by 60 foot shop building that I had constructed, 1,800 square feet, which was pretty big. And my wife was saying, like, what are we going to do with all this space? But I had another friend, Jack, who always was influencing me to make it bigger.
Yeah.
And I'm glad he did.
Oh yeah.
I started getting business pretty much after I retired, supporting jobs I had done first at Knowles Atomic, and then later on other companies came to me with projects and automation things. I ended up hiring my son, and together we did several other jobs from various people. We had a job with Orvis fishing reels,
Oh, nice.
and another job making a candle measuring robot for ASTM standard safety testing.
Huh.
That was a really cool project.
Yeah.
And
So
then-
you did a lot of measuring and sensing, sensor type
Making
work.
unique
and-
sensors and
Yeah.
unique automation systems
Yeah.
that would work. And then we started getting jobs for actually 2 different nuclear power companies that were making new type of reactor designs. And I ended up getting so much work from one of those companies that in the end they said they wanted to hire me, out of my ideal retirement owned company job into their company and lease my shop, which is in the backyard. So that's what ended up happening about 3 years ago now.
Very cool.
So now I work exclusively for that company, which is Kairos Power in California. And my son is also an engineer for that company.
Yeah. So you've got a few guys working out of your shop. Out
Yeah, and
there
we have
now,
a
right?
couple other guys now that
Yeah.
are also through Kairos. And
Yeah.
Kairos leases my shop, my laboratory I should call it,
Yeah.
from us.
Very
And
cool.
it's a wonderful relationship. They're a really good company, a lot of interesting projects
Yeah.
that we work on.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great word for it. I never really thought of it that way. It's actually like a combination laboratory and shop.
Yes.
It's more than what I would consider a shop.
Yeah, this is where a good lab, like Dr. Frankenstein's lab, for
Yeah.
instance, he would have machine tools and electronics and soldering irons and
Yep.
oscilloscopes.
Yep.
That's where a shop becomes a lab, when you add all those tools that a scientist needs to make the crazy things that we come up with.
Yeah. Cool.
And that's kind of what's happening in the shop in my backyard,
Yeah.
which we'll
Yeah.
get to later on.
Yeah, I was gonna say, why don't we start taking a look at some of the stuff you've
Sure,
got going on?
sure.
So we're in your basement shop
Basement
right
shop.
now, and this is your personal shop still.
Yep. So the basement shop started off as a woodworking shop. I didn't do metalworking until probably 25 years or so ago. But at first it was all woodworking, and it was driven by a need to make furniture that I couldn't otherwise afford, or that was unique. So table saws, band saws, lots of clamps all over the place,
Yep.
that kind of thing.
Okay.
And then later on I got into metalworking, and so I have some metalworking equipment in this shop.
All right. Well, why don't we take a look?
Okay. Okay, so this is the shop. This area of the shop is pretty much metalworking. Well, there's a little bit of woodworking on the sander. And I also have a storage rack with some lumber and metal mixed up. And then as you come around to this area of the shop, it's more in the woodworking area. Although again, it's a little bit mixed up. So I have a table saw, which came from an industrial auction. It's a unisaw, cabinet maker saw. It's seen a lot of use. It was a 3-phase motor, and I have a capacitor phase delay circuit that allows it to start pretty well.
Okay.
I've been upgraded with fences and miter gauges and all that stuff.
Yep. Is that a Bessemeyer fence?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It's been so long I hardly can remember.
Yeah.
It's connected to a dust collector, and I guess the dust collector is a pretty important aspect.
Oh yeah, especially in a basement shop.
Yeah, so my dust collector is a cyclone. And this pipe connects to the various tools in the shop, brings the air in tangentially to the cyclone, and then a bin below catches all the big debris. And in the garage is actually where the noisy part is, the dust collector motor.
Ah.
So that keeps the noise a little bit down.
Yeah,
When I'm in the shop
That's
and
one thing
using-
I remember. My dust collector was the noisiest thing in the shop.
Yeah, so here, if I turned on, other than hearing a lot of airflow, if it wants to start. There it goes. That's what
Wow.
it sounds like when it's running.
Huh.
Pretty good airflow, but more in the shop you mostly just hear the airflow.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah, so very cool. So that's very quiet.
Yep. The workbench is important. I don't have a fancy woodworking bench, but I do have a nice top that I got from Grizzly. And then the cabinets underneath and on the wall are all homemade.
Nice.
These cabinets are also all homemade. And a set of nice speakers, because when I'm in the shop, it's pretty much where I typically listen to music. So I have a Sonos amplifier that powers the speakers.
Nice.
So sometimes I make more noise with the speakers than I do with the machines. The bandsaw is from what used to be Craigslist. It's a Woodtech bandsaw. And it's set up for mostly wood. Occasionally I'll cut aluminum on it.
Okay.
But
That's a pretty
mostly
good
it's
sized
aluminum.
bandsaw. What size is that?
I don't know.
Oh, Woodtech. Oh yeah, I remember that brand.
Yeah,
Yep.
I'm not sure, what the throat is on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I used to do quite a bit of woodworking. And kind of got a little bored with it, and that's why I decided to get into the metalworking.
Yeah, that's kind of what I made enough furniture, and I wanted something different.
Yeah.
Yeah. I tend to use a lot of Milwaukee tools now. That's changed through the ages. I used to really like my Bosch tools. But lately I noticed the M12 Milwaukee stuff is a nice size, and they have a huge variety of different things.
Totally agree with you. I use a combination of Ryobi and Milwaukee.
Yeah, the Ryobis are more affordable. Milwaukees are a little tougher, and some variety that Ryobi doesn't have.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yep, I've just started getting some M18 stuff.
Okay.
But I find the M12 is more geared towards the size of the projects I do,
Yeah.
which tend to be smaller, if anything.
Yep.
Bandsaw, I have a Nova Voyager bandsaw, which
Drill press?
drill press,
Yeah.
excuse me, which I really like. It's quite electronic, but the nice thing is it goes from a very low RPM automatically. I mean, it goes down to like 50 RPMs. So if I'm spinning something really slow,
Wow.
I can get way down there and not worry about getting out of control.
Yeah.
But on the high end, just by turning this knob, I can go up towards 3,000 RPMs.
Huh. So this uses electronic speed control
Yes.
then, as opposed to the belts.
Yep, yep. And it also has a built-in depth gauge. So right away when I start turning it, I can see the depth. I had a Powermatic. Their high-end Powermatic drill press, and the runout was too much. The runout was more consistent with what a woodworker would be happy with. It was about 5/1000ths of an inch, which if you're a woodworker,
That's
okay.
that's tight, yeah.
Yeah,
but
but
for
I
machining,
like-
that's yeah.
I like to do woodworking and metalworking.
Yeah.
So for about the same price, for like $1,800, I ended up getting this, and I sold my Powermatic drill press.
Yeah,
And
nice.
I've been totally happy with this. I
Yeah.
think it's substantially better than the Powermatic because of its huge range and speeds, its force feedback. It has all kinds of functions like tapping function.
Oh.
If I want to tap a whole bunch of holes, like an optical bench full of holes, I can set this up with a tap, and it'll go down to the point where it senses a certain force. And then once you ease up on the knob, just like a tapping head, it reverses and comes out. So you
Nice.
can quickly tap a whole bunch of holes.
Huh. Very cool.
So
I didn't know
I've been
that.
very happy with
Yeah,
this.
it's got a nice big table too,
Yeah.
and yeah, very cool.
I highly recommend it. It's not. It's kind of an off-name brand, but it's
I've heard of
good for
Nova
me.
before. That's yeah. If
Yeah.
you do a search for them, they're high-end equipment. So
Okay. And
yeah,
same price pretty much as the big Powermatic.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's high-end equipment too. So
Yep. Yep.
yeah,
It's true.
very
I think
cool.
it's a much better tool for the money.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like it certainly suits your needs more.
Yep. Coming back into this part of the shop, I also do some welding down here.
Okay.
And so this is a little welding table that I've put together. It has a TIG welder. And of course, if I'm welding, I have to worry about the fumes coming off. So I'll show you how I handle that in a minute.
Okay.
But on this welding table, one of the neat things I did was I put a pneumatic buckle on it. So I've got pneumatic cylinders built in the table. So I can bring it up to different heights and then lock it in if I want to.
Very
And
cool.
because it's made out of metal, I can do welding on it without worrying about singeing or burning anything.
Yeah. So you made this table?
Yep.
Very
That was my
cool.
first welding project.
Okay. And the top is aluminum.
Top's a piece of aluminum. Yep.
Okay.
Nice flat
Yeah.
plate.
Yeah. Well, nice thing about that, you won't get a lot of splatter sticking to it and stuff from the
Yes.
from you know.
And I
steel
don't
and-
do any big welding, but I do a lot of smaller welding.
Mm-hmm.
And it's super handy for that. And if I want to go down, I just run it down. And then it can become an outfeed table. for
Ah,
table saw
yes.
or other projects.
Yep.
Really nice to have a table that you can adjust when you're doing really fine small work. You can bring it up pretty close to where your work level is
Yeah.
and see what's happening.
Yeah, and on wheels too.
And on wheels, too, so
yeah,
it's
I'm a
going
big
around.
I'm a big proponent of having things on wheels, but the height adjustability is something I hadn't
Yeah.
thought about. That I'll have to think about that for my welding table.
But you know, if I was doing it again now, I would buy one of those height adjustable desks. Because that was not available when I built this table.
Yeah.
So that's probably a better starting point if you're going to build an outfeed work table and you wanted something that was height adjustable.
Yeah. Cool.
They're super available now. For dust collection, if I'm welding or if I'm doing work on the table saw or sanding, when I want to open the windows, I have two windows in the shop and I put them both on pneumatic cylinders. So if I fill the shop up with dust, what I'll do is I'll throw a couple switches. And when I throw those switches, it opens this window with the fan and it opens the other window. So I get this through ventilation to air the shop out.
Cool.
And it's also useful when I'm
Yeah.
spray painting and stuff.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that.
So you got fume extraction for the
Yeah.
whole room.
Yeah, that's pretty important.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. I've the older I get, the more I realize
Yeah.
the importance of keeping your eyes and your lungs and everything
Absolutely.
else clear and
Yep.
safety. Yeah. Not
I
like
can open
what.
just one if I want. Or close them both up.
Cool.
And the switches are by the door, so as I'm evacuating because I stunk the place up, I can put the things on.
Very cool.
Air the place out. This is an old CNC machine that I made. Oh man, must be 20 years ago now.
Okay.
CNC woodworking type
Uh huh.
projects were done on this.
Yeah. I see you got the spindle
Things
out
like-
of it.
Yeah, spindles off it. It has various spindles that I can put on it. This type of stuff it can cut.
Oh, yeah. So what kind of controller did you use on this?
I made my own. This is what I put together from various electronic. Oh, it's not open right now. You can kind of see into the side.
Yeah.
It's made out of old pieces of equipment
Wow.
that is kind of surplus.
Uh-huh.
So the whole thing is kind of surplus. The main table I picked up from a scrapyard, which you were at. This came from the scrapyard that we went to.
Uh-huh.
And even the electronics inside here, most are from the scrapyard, the power supplies and stuff.
Huh.
So this is kind of a scrapyard built CNC table.
Okay.
It's been replaced now by the Tormach in the laboratory shop.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I'm not that
Doesn't
up on
get
the
as much.
CNC machines, but that's one of the things I'm learning a little bit more. I've got the little CNC micro engraver. I want to get
Okay.
into that a little bit more.
yeah, I've always been fascinated by that.
Yeah.
And I made different accessories to go on here. Actually, a glass cutter will go on here so I can do glass scribing to help break the glass.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Especially with all the optical stuff you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So it's been a handy little machine.
Yeah,
But
very
I actually
cool.
think I'm going to be getting rid of it soon. It just takes up too much space, and with this Tormach in the lab, I don't use it much.
Hmm.
And then we'll go on to the metalworking part of the shop.
Okay.
So in the metalworking part of the shop, this Taiwanese mill, I've had it for probably about 20, maybe 25 years. It's been a real workhorse for me. I've replaced one of the hand wheels with a motor, and I also put a motor in the drive using a belt feed to drive the spindle up and down.
Cool.
And I have a third axis that goes on top of here, which is a motorized platform. So I can make this a CNC machine.
Okay.
But almost all the time it functions as a manual machine.
Mm-hmm.
And having digital readouts, it's just really nice. If I want to make an array of holes or mill a slot,
Yeah.
this is probably where I'm doing it, as opposed to using the Tormach CNC machine.
So this is the 40 size mill, right?
Yes, this
Okay.
is the 40 size.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. Cool.
So additions have been lights I've added, the DROs I've added, a motorized axis, which is driven off this control panel. So if I want to run the motorized axis, not by a computer, but as a motorized drive,
Mm-hmm.
then I can just turn this on and control it that way.
Okay. Very cool.
Sanding station gets used all the time. It's amazing how long this Harbor Freight little sander has lasted. But if it ever breaks, I'll have to buy another one. It's one of those things, you know you like a tool when if it breaks on you, you have to get a replacement right away.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what the sander is. If something went wrong with that, I would have to replace it with
All
something
right.
else.
Well, I have to keep that in mind. I'm actually thinking about getting a new one now. The one I have is much more suited for woodworking.
Yeah.
A lot of plastic parts, so
okay.
I'm thinking I want to get something that's all metal. And
Yeah.
I've been looking at those knife grinding, the belt grinders, the
I've looked at those
2x72.
myself. I don't know if I'd use it enough.
Yeah, that's the thing.
They're
They're so
pretty high-end
expensive.
and, yeah. This
So-
one I use it for metal as much as I do for wood.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm always grinding aluminum on it, even steel.
Yeah.
Although steel can be a little rough on the belts.
Yep.
But yeah, belts are pretty cheap.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
They're not a big deal. Cabinets full of tools, mostly machine shop tools in here. Some optical equipment in this cabinet. Over on this shelf is, full of tools that support the milling operations.
Okay.
And then I have two lathes, a smaller German lathe, which is really nice for precision work. It goes very fast. It's got a little sewing machine light on it, a nice chuck, and it's got really good high-speed capability. If I can figure out why, there it goes. If I want to turn it on, it's variable speed. And it's like running a sewing machine.
Very nice.
Very smooth, very easy.
What brand is that?
It's Krazi.
Krazi. Okay.
Yep. They
Yep.
have a different name now.
Is that belt driven then, or?
No, it's gear driven.
Wow, that's really
think
quiet
it's
for
gear
gears.
I think
Yeah.
it's gear driven. I know the gears for the threading are. It might be belt driven.
It's very quiet.
Yeah.
And you got a DRO on that as well.
DRO on this as well. Yeah. DROs on almost everything. Once you get used to them,
Yep.
it's like you can't live
Yep.
without
I
them.
blame you for that with my DRO addiction.
welcome.
Yes.
And then, so this lathe and this lathe are kind of what replaced the lathe that you got, Mick.
Uh-huh.
This one's smaller than the one you got, and this one bigger. And this one I got from Facebook Marketplace a few years ago. And I always wanted one that was bigger, capable of doing larger items. And it's all I could do to get this into the basement. That's one of the problems with the basement shop. Whenever you have a big piece of tooling, the logistics of getting it down.
Yeah.
This will not come out again. At least not by me. When I sell the house, it goes with it along with the pool table in the other room.
How much do you want for your house?
Not quite ready to sell yet.
No,
Just
no.
enjoying
Okay.
it now.
Okay.
This lathe
All right.
I've also replaced the gears for threading with a automatic threading spindle, which basically means that the drive that used to be done with a gear train underneath this cover is now all done electronically. Electronic lead screw. I can actually show you that.
Yeah. So this is the one that from James Clough, right? Clough 42?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And that's a wonderful project if anybody is inclined towards a mix of electronics and machining.
Yeah.
He really gives good instructions on how to set it up. But of course, every lathe is a different machining project. So I took all the gears off over here. A couple of them I left on. But the main drive is through this stepper motor, which is the biggest stepper motor I could fit in this little space. And it drives the lead screw.
Okay.
And on the spindle is an encoder set up with these two gears.
Okay.
So when the spindle turns, you can see it's turning the gears over there.
Yep.
And the electronics then that this and the stepper motor connect to are synchronized.
Yep.
And you can change the synchronization to pretty much get any thread that you want. So you can do metric threads or English threads.
Very cool.
And you can also use it for setting up various drive feed rates. So I've been very happy with it.
Yeah, very
actually,
cool.
If I'm doing threading with this electronic setup rather than switching gears on my Prezi lathe.
Yeah.
It's just so much quicker.
Yeah. So one question
Last week I cut a metric thread. I think it was a 42 millimeter type thread for a camera lens setup.
Yeah.
And I hadn't done it for a while, but it was piece cake.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
So one of the questions I was thinking about, I was curious about these electronic lead screws. Do they have the ability to set like stops, like for how far you should thread?
I don't know if they have that ability. I've never wanted to run it in that mode.
Because one of the things I'm always, I guess, afraid of when I'm single point threading is crashing
Going
it,
too
right?
far. Yes, I worry about that too.
Yeah.
And if I'm threading, actually what I'll do, let me turn the power supply on for the electronic lead screw. So this will power up this guy once I turn the lathe on. So if I'm setting up for threading, I'm going to engage this knob, of course. And if I'm worried about doing something really fragile where I don't want to crash it, I'll turn the spindle by hand. Once I engage it. Okay, so you can see I've set it up with a certain pitch right now.
Yep.
And if I'm worried about crashing it, rather than running it with the motor drive at slow speed, I'll just turn it by hand. And you can see it's doing all the synchronizing for me.
Yeah.
So if I'm doing something really fragile or expensive, like a microscope part or an antique piece that I want the thread to be accurate and I don't want to destroy it, and I'm out of practice,
Yeah.
then I'll turn. At least the first few passes I'll do by hand.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, because you have, this isn't a threaded spindle either, is this? This is
Yeah, this is a D14 spindle.
right. So if you wanted to, you could run it in reverse and do the threading backwards, starting from the inside out.
That is
like
correct.
That's the Joe
Yep.
Pye method, I guess.
Yep.
That and I can't do that with the clawsing because it's got the threaded spindle.
Yeah.
So I've been thinking about maybe a way to put some set screws, drill them through the backing plate on the
Okay.
chuck, so I can put some brass tipped or whatever, so I don't damage the threads, to lock that on the spindle a little bit better.
That sounds like a great project.
Maybe try, yeah. So
Yeah.
maybe one of the future projects, but. Yeah, I'm really sorely tempted by the electronic lead screw, but I am not going to mess up that clawsing with that.
I don't blame you.
No,
It's a fun project, but I don't know if I could go backwards after. I don't know if I'd want to go backwards actually after
Yeah.
using it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
really got to a point where whenever I was cutting threads and I'd get out that sheet of paper that has all the gears and the numbers and which ones you want to do to achieve your desired thread.
Yep.
It's kind of a nightmare.
Yeah.
Of course, on the clouding you have quick change gears, so
Yeah,
it's not too bad. then.
It's not too bad as long as I'm sticking to SAE Imperial
Yeah.
threads,
Yeah,
because
what
I
it can
can't do
do.
metric on it.
Yep. This lathe, although it's really nice, didn't have that luxury.
Yeah.
It had these knobs, but it's still, to get to most of the
You had to
threading,
change
you
gears.
always were changing gears. And I have a drawer, I don't know if it's this drawer or another drawer. that's full of all the gears.
Yep.
Well, somewhere. I haven't touched them in so long. Maybe I
Yeah.
put them in a box and put them away. I
Yeah.
might have.
Yeah.
Another thing that I've done with this is for changing the chucks. I've added up a little pulley system. in
Oh,
the
yeah.
ceiling. So if I'm putting this chuck on, I can lift it up,
Yep.
bring it over, and then I put it on this saddle to put it on. Of course, the other one would have to come off first. So that's
Very
how I
handy.
handle the pain in the ass part of changing chucks.
Yeah, that's a good setup.
And another thing I have from milling something or from sanding something on here, I can drop my dust collector and have a little hood above it.
Ah.
I can collect the dust if I'm doing something that might hinder my breathing.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have air compressor down here?
The air compressor's in the garage also.
So you have air here.
Yeah, it's like when the windows are open, they're pneumatic cylinders.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And then over at the main workbench, I have an air hose.
Okay. Yeah.
And
So I was
also
just
the
thinking
vacuum.
you could add one of those minimum quantity lubrication systems here too, because
Yep,
obviously
good.
you don't want a lot of liquid,
Yes.
flood coolant down here
Yep.
or anything.
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
Yeah. Very cool.
And one more area down here before we go to the main lab, and that's the basement workshop, or the basement office now, or I guess office. It used to be an electronic area, and it actually still is. But in here is where I do my more fragile work, I guess I'd call it. I have a sink, some old kitchen cabinets, and then I get into cabinetry that I've made. So all this woodworking down here, these cabinets and the desk, and the entire unit where the books are and stuff are all things that I've made,
Wow. Beautiful.
along with the house full of furniture.
Very nice. Beautiful.
This cabinet I'm very happy with. This is a small parts cabinet. More or less a machinist tool chest that I use mostly for microscope parts right now. I have, and some machining tools.
Yeah.
in it.
So you collect microscopes, right?
Yeah, I've always been fascinated. It's kind of one of the reasons I got into science and became a scientist with an interest in microscopy.
Nice.
So I have
Yeah.
1, 2, 3 microscopes down here. And I'm working on a 4th one over there. That one has a stripped rack and pinion gear.
Okay.
So
So you're going to make a new gear set, or?
Yeah, I pulled gears off another microscope.
Oh, okay.
That was not as high quality. That one's a Swiss-made microscope.
Very nice. All right. Oh, yep. There's an airline there too.
Yep.
All right. So shall we go take a look at the big shot?
Absolutely.
So here's a quick shot of the outside of the laboratory / workshop.
That was made on that little CNC downstairs.
Oh, okay. All right. So this is your outside, I guess, commercial shop.
Yes, yes. This is, one day it will be, again, my personal makerspace. This is the conference room. And the conference room serves double duty as a bit of a laboratory space too. An optical bench with I'm developing a lens system for looking at, I can't talk too much about what I'm looking at.
That's
but
okay.
It's a special lens system for part of a project I'm working on.
So are you actually making the lenses themselves and everything?
No, I'm just setting up the proper lensing
Okay.
so we can get good images
Yeah.
of a job we're doing.
Yeah. I don't know. Are you familiar with Laney Machine Shop, or Laney Machine, I think it's called?
No.
And, he's a professor at a college in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Okay.
And one of the things he's doing recently is making lenses.
Wow. Okay. That's a lot of
So
work.
yeah, so he's built special laps for them and everything, and teaches a lot of really cool
A
stuff.
lot of people doing that do it for astronomy.
That's what his
Telescopes.
for telescopes. Yeah,
Okay.
one of his projects for his students is building a telescope.
Okay.
So yeah,
I'm about to contact an optical engineer to help me out on a specific aspect of this project.
okay.
So, conference room.
More
And
microscopes.
this is kind of like a collection of antique stuff. a Van de Graaff, not a Van de Graaff, a Wimhurst generator. And I don't think I have this connected. Maybe it's connected. No, it fell off. This is a high voltage meter, a kind of an antique meter that I picked up and restored. And I typically will have it hooked up to my Van de Graaff generator if the alligator clip doesn't want to come off. And it'll tell me how many volts my Wimhurst generator will make. It's not on anymore, but we can make sparks still. Every mad scientist needs a spark machine.
Yeah.
And a bunch of little display things. Some antique. This is a radioactive dial that I picked up off of an old plane at the Schenectady Museum.
Okay.
Airport Museum. An electron microscope stage.
Yep. Radioactive from the illumination
Yeah,
for
from the radon
Yeah.
and the paint. It's hard to find those anymore. This is a product that I made before I switched jobs and came over to this company. I can't tell you what it is because I'm not allowed. And this is the main part of the laboratory. We're doing various experiments in here. Some cabinets to hold all the equipment, or some of the equipment that we have. I do a lot of stuff with optical benches, but I almost use optical benches as an erector set. So I'll set up experiments using optical rods and stuff, but not so much for optics, but for just holding things.
Yeah.
And fixturing.
Fixture tables, yeah.
Yeah. Optical benches and fixture tables they're very similar. Main part lab, we do a lot of one-time prototype fabrication in the lab. Have a Tormach CNC. We've been getting a fair amount of use lately.
So that's a 1100 MX.
Yep. And then coming back here is one of the shop spaces. Where this shop space we tend to do a lot of electronics in. So we got a nice electronics workbench. Lots of parts storage. And another one of the antiques I restored. This is an old dental drill,
Oh, wow.
which still functions. You have a cavity.
Okay.
We actually use it as a Dremel motor tool now,
Yeah.
more than anything. But it's pretty neat. That I found on Facebook Marketplace or maybe Craigslist back then
Huh.
when I got it.
Very cool.
And then in this part of the lab is where we do larger fabrication. So putting together an experimental setup over here. We have a couple furnaces in back. 2 machines. And actually, UMIC influenced my decision on getting the Precision Matthews machines. So we've got a little Precision Matthews mill and the small Precision Matthews lathe.
Yeah, are you liking them?
Yeah, I particularly like the lathe.
Yeah,
The
good.
lathe is like a super nice sized lathe.
Good, good. I'm
All this
glad.
work.
Yeah.
The mill, I actually like the Rangfu 40 that I have in the basement better than this one.
Really?
Yeah, it's a little beefier.
Oh, is it power or is it stability?
It's both.
Yeah.
It's power and stability.
Okay.
This one's got a little, it's nice for the work we do.
Yeah.
It's got a higher speed, more precise spindle, but it's not quite as beefy as the one in the basement.
Yeah. Yeah, I was surprised when I saw the 728 VT at the summer bash at Stan Zinkowski's place. They gave one away last year, and it was much smaller than I expected.
Yeah.
It's much smaller than my 727, so I don't know. I guess they base those numbers off of the table size,
Perhaps.
but I don't know. There doesn't seem to be much of a rhyme or reason
Okay.
to most of it.
I've been happy with the precision of it, and it's a very quiet machine. When I run the Rangfu 40 up to anything above 2,000 RPMs, it just sounds like it's going too fast for the machine. This one
Yeah.
I can run it up towards 3,000.
Yeah.
It's very happy.
Yeah, one of the things that I like particularly about the Precision Matthews stuff is their customer service.
Okay.
As you know, I mentioned in one of my videos, one of my mill broke down, and they were right on top of it, fixed it, replaced the parts, no questions asked.
Yeah.
So, you know, you may pay a little bit more, but I think the quality is a little bit higher than
Comparing
you
it
get
to
with like
Grizzly
a
tools that I've used Grizzly machines before.
yeah,
Precision Matthews are worth the extra money. They're
Yeah.
not a lot extra,
yeah.
and I find them be. I wouldn't go to Grizzly on buying a lathe or a small mill.
Yeah, and I
Precision
think
Matthews.
especially when you're talking about something that you use for your profession,
Yeah.
you know, that customer service is important because they'll overnight the part to you, and
Right.
so
Right.
yeah, cool. So variable speed drill press here, I see.
Yeah, drill press I'm not too happy with.
No,
No, it's okay
yeah,
at best. It's not like the drill press downstairs.
yeah,
I might be getting a better one up here in the future.
okay,
I tend to use a lot of the Husky from Home Depot type cabinets.
Yep.
They're throughout the lab.
Yep.
I find the Husky ones are a really good deal, and they're nice deep. They're 24 inches deep. So over here I have a couple back to back.
Yep.
There's a center workspace.
yep, yeah. I've got the lathe, the closing is mounted on the Husky cabinet.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, very. I'm a big fan of that type of mounting system.
I have an X-Tool laser cutter.
And this is which one?
This is the X-Tool P2.
P2. Okay.
Yep, it's a carbon dioxide laser. I was making Christmas decorations.
Oh, nice.
I do some personal work out here too.
Yeah. So yeah, that's another company that I think you pay a little bit more, but the quality is just so nice
Yeah.
on their stuff.
Yeah,
It's
true.
yeah.
And for our hood, I have kind of a custom-made hood for our applications. It's a kitchen blower up here, a kitchen range top, and I hooked it up with structural extruded aluminum and made it so I can raise this up and bring big experiments in. So if somebody has an experiment they're doing that they need a hood in, they can set it up on a mobile bench.
Yeah.
And they can just move it out, and we can move something else in that needs
Very
to be
nice.
aired out.
So that's one of the clutch welding fabrication tables, right?
That is correct.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
the same one I've got, but you didn't. I've got the legs on mine.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm very happy with it.
Yeah. And then we have some welders over here.
Okay.
The made plasma cutter and a TIG machine.
What's the big box there?
The gray one in the back?
Yeah.
That's an old robot that I got from New York State Surplus.
Huh.
I haven't figured out what to do with it yet. A lot of robotics I learned by buying surplus robotics and taking it apart
Yeah.
and then using it in other applications.
Making furnaces here, or
I can't talk about that.
okay.
It gets into the company stuff.
Gotcha.
And we have a gantry that does a great job. It's a Harbor Freight type lift mechanism that's mounted on an aluminum I-beam, and we tied it in to each of the rafters.
Ah, okay.
Very handy. It gets used all the time.
Yeah, and there's your press.
Yep.
That was the second time I ever came and visited you. I called you up and asked you if you could help me with something on the press. That was when I was fixing up that old vise,
That's right.
and
Okay.
I needed to bend the handle because when I was a little kid, I had put a wrench or a hammer on there trying to tighten it down and bent it.
Okay.
And yeah, so I've acquired one of my own since then. But yeah.
Once you start using them, you can't live without them.
Well, that's one of the things I just got is I got the Swag Off-Road Finger Press Brake
Okay.
kit, so I'm going to be welding that up. And,
All right.
Yeah, very cool.
And I'll show you the other part of the lab. The other part of the lab is offices and a bit more lab space. So in this part of the lab we have two office areas. We have a microscope bench and some lab bench space going out this way. And a kitchenette and a bathroom. Yeah, I never thought I'd have my own lab, but here I am.
Yeah. Very cool. So those are some pretty beefy stands there.
Yep, yep, mostly optical, but it's also some leftover measurement height gauges.
Mm-hmm. And this is a recent addition, right?
Yes, this was put in about 2 years ago now.
Very nice.
And it all kind of developed. It was never a plan. It just kind of was a step-by-step transition. At first it was my workspace, and maybe I would have a business. And then I had a little business going. And then I was absorbed by another company, and it became, more of a real lab space, which is kind of where it is now.
Yeah.
I don't know what'll happen next. And back here is the storage area and my tractor.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
This is packed.
Yeah. So you guys up here got tractors. I don't know why. Guess I got to get a tractor.
Yeah, you need a tractor.
Very cool. All right. Well, thank you, Joe.
Okay. Anything else you want to see?
I don't know. Is there anything you can think of that we missed? I know this was a really quick skim through here, but as you said, there's not much you can really talk about. So
Yeah, unfortunately not here. And getting into microscopes or anything, I don't think your audience would really care to see too much details on that. You have a coordinate measuring machine, though. This is a different type of coordinate measuring machine. This one doesn't get much use, but it's set up quite nicely. So in this one, in yours, you look through the big screen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the optical
Part of the
comparator.
shadow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This one, you're looking directly at the part.
Yeah.
And you have micrometers on the stage to move it around.
Yeah.
And also micrometers up here and over here to move it in and out. And a little ring light to illuminate the subject.
Nice.
Same type of thing if you want to measure threads or dimensions of a small part.
That's probably more what I would need in my shop. That optical comparator I've got is too big.
Yeah.
I've used it once, and it's up for sale.
Okay.
Yeah, it's too big.
Really cool machine.
It is,
Takes
yeah,
up a lot of
but
space
for a
what it does.
hobby guy like me operating out of a 2-car garage, I probably shouldn't have bought
I
that.
agree. And even this rarely gets used.
Well, and that's the thing. So I've got the little digital microscope sitting right next to the optical comparator on my metrology station, and I use that way more.
Yeah.
I use it for looking at the finish on parts. I use it for looking at carbide inserts and stuff to see if they're, how damaged they are exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm thinking about just putting a little precision table on that, so I can use it for basically the same features I would use the optical comparator, thread comparisons, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you can absolutely. I mean, a precision table like this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. They're available on eBay.
Yep. Yeah, I've got a couple linked in one of my saved lists that, yeah.
If I come across any, I'll let you know.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks again, Joe. It
was fun.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to find this fascinating. And, as we were talking about before, if anybody wants to learn anything more about, what was the name of the Schlerin effect? Yeah, or maybe the experiences you've had with the electronic lead screw, that kind of stuff. I know James has done some more updates to that since then.
Yes, he has, and I haven't actually kept up. I put mine on about 1.5 years ago.
Yeah.
Maybe 2 years ago, and I should check to see what kind of improvements he's made.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, thanks, Joe.
Absolutely. So
one of the things that Joe just mentioned, the Schlerin effect, we did take a look at a couple of things that he built and is building, and I'll do a separate video on those. They're really quite fascinating, and the way they work is it's really cool. But this video was getting a little bit long, and I wanted to do justice to the kaleidoscope and the Schlieren effect tool that Joe built. So those will be coming out shortly. So thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this tour of my buddy Joe's shops. Take care.